Right, let's talk about the political hot potato of the moment. Bangladesh replaced at the T20 World Cup by the next highest ranked team in Scotland. It's a complicated situation. Bangladesh said they'd prefer not to play their games in India as scheduled, citing security concerns. It's, as I say, I mean, it really is a very, very hot political potato at the moment, cricketing potato, and to help us unpack it and make sense of it, perhaps, hopefully, is Bangladesh cricket writer Tawhid Qureshi, who joins us live now. Tawhid, were Bangladesh calling someone's bluff? Did they? I mean, it's catastrophic. I mean, the World Cricket Association have released a statement saying that it reflects very, very poorly on the game as a whole. Just doesn't feel right. I mean, I feel an overwhelming sense of sadness that Bangladesh won't be there. Thanks for your time, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks, Manus. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that sense of sadness is shared very widely, certainly in Bangladesh. But in terms of, you know, who should be blamed for this? How can we apportion blame? I think there's multiple people involved in this who should be, blamed. Really, I think, as you say, it's a catastrophic failure of diplomacy, if nothing else. I mean, the fact that still kind of astounds me is that the discussion has always taken place in very binary terms, i.e., Bangladesh refusing to play their matches in India. They only wanted to play in Sri Lanka, and the ICC slash BCCI always with the stance of no, that's not going to happen. You have to play your matches in India. I'm astounded that there was no compromise reached, that there was never a discussion about kind of middle ground or concessions that might take place. And I think that kind of speaks to a couple of things. I think for me, there were really no adults in the room at any stage kind of talking about this seriously. Because, let's face it, they're not trying to solve world peace. They're just trying to reschedule a few matches of cricket. It's not beyond the realms of possibility to kind of crack this. And I just give one quick example of a concession or a discussion point that I don't think happened, which I think should have happened. And that's the fact that there's a white ball tour to Bangladesh from India penciled in for later on this year. It was actually postponed from last year. Even before this episode, there was a huge question mark around whether or not that series would take place. And I think, one thing that the ICC slash BCCI could have quite easily done was provide a cast iron guarantee to Bangladesh to say, right, if you play it, your World Cup fixtures in India, we will guarantee that India will tour Bangladesh later on in the year. Those kinds of discussions, concessions, I don't think were ever approached. And I think that's, like you say, a real sadness, a real frustration.
Yeah, I mean, when you mention and you say whenever you hear the word common sense, there's never any sense behind it. And whenever we talk about leadership groups in any cricketing board, somebody says adults in the room, and there's never any adults in the room when it comes to decision making. So, I mean, it is difficult. I mean, Manas said it at the top. Was it a call of bluff? Did Bangladesh look for that? What is it like for the Bangladesh people? How have they taken to this decision? And I think more importantly, I think you've got to feel for the Bangladesh players because they've got short careers. They've got little earning possibilities, and big world tournaments are where they make their names from and make their careers from. How frustrating is it going to be for them?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the BCB, the Bangladesh Cricket Board, kind of calling their bluff, I think to an extent their hands were tied ever since the politicians got involved. So, as Manas was explaining, it all goes back to the withdrawal of Mr. Fazlur Rahman from the IPL for quite vague reasons, really. The BCCI to this day have never really specified explicitly the reasons for that. But ever since the Bangladesh politicians got involved and basically, what they said, I'm paraphrasing, but they sort of said, well, this is an affront to national dignity. Ever since those kind of strong worded statements came out, I think the BCB's hands were tied to an extent. But I think you're right, Harmy, even kind of, allowing for that situation, as I was saying, I don't think the BCB, we're thinking laterally, really. We're thinking creatively or intelligently about, okay, there's this kind of two very entrenched polar opposite views. How can we get around this? There was all we really got from the BCB were these the rationale was around security and the fact that how they didn't feel confident that security was there. And really, as time went on, that kind of rationale became more and more flimsy because the ICC, their assessment, their independent security assessment showed that there wasn't a significant security threat. So yeah, the BCB certainly haven't covered themselves in glory, nor have all the other organisations in this. But going back to your point as well, Harmy, about yes, this does affect the players hugely. As you say, they've got short careers. It's not like a Bangladesh player doesn't earn nearly as much as an equivalent England player or Australian player. So these short careers really do matter, and these tournaments really do matter. And we only need to think back to less than 2 weeks ago, where there was a one-day player strike during the BPL, which shows that those relations are really strained already between the board and the players. And I think the fact that they are now missing out in the World Cup, those relations will only be more strained.
Mohsin Naqvi, the Pakistan Cricket Board president, has also cast doubt recently on Pakistan's participation now in solidarity with Bangladesh. You mentioned the ICC and then added stroke BCCI, and I was going to ask, do you think this might be the beginning of a little bit of global pushback against the BCCI's dominance? But that's not going to happen. Can't see England and Australia and the other smaller nations standing up and forming a union. So there's a danger, isn't there, of the BCB and the PCB, Bangladesh and Pakistan, isolating themselves by trying to stand up to the BCCI.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right, Manners, because if you look at so there was a vote around Bangladesh's participation that was taken to all the full member boards, all 16 of them. Only 2 member boards, i.e. Bangladesh and Pakistan, voted for Bangladesh's participation in the World Cup. None of the other boards, like you say, Manners, voted in favour because let's face it, they know where their bread is buttered. And is there a chance of Bangladesh being isolated alongside Pakistan? I suppose there is. I think the real kind of worry and concern for me and for Bangladesh supporters is that Bangladesh as a cricket nation now becomes more and more marginalized. So along the lines of maybe what has happened in that relationship between India and Pakistan. And to be quite frank, Bangladesh, even before this episode, in the global kind of grand scheme of things, they're not a major cricketing power. For example, they don't regularly play against the big three. They haven't toured England for almost 16 years for a test series, for example. So, they were never really a big hitter in the first place. And I think this episode just kind of marginalizes them even more. And once I guess that process starts, it's quite difficult to reverse.
People like me and Harmy have a vague understanding of the history and the political tensions between India and Pakistan. But I can honestly say we're struggling to understand the political sensitivities and what is the issue? I mean, Mustafizu, the poor man, he's got $1 million contract with the Kolkata Knight Riders. He's the pawn in the middle of this, but we don't. Does anybody really understand what the source of the tension is between Bangladesh and India?
Well, I suppose, yeah, the politics of it probably go back to 2024 because I mean, if you take a wider view of things, actually the cricket relationship between India and Bangladesh has been very close over the previous
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah.
India were a huge supporter in Bangladesh actually becoming a full member in the first place, a test playing member. But I guess what happened, kind of rewinding back to 2024, there was an overthrow of the then Bangladesh government. The Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has since gone into hiding and is in exile basically in India, despite repeated attempts of the current Bangladesh government to extradite Sheikh Hasina back to Bangladesh to face trial for alleged crimes that she committed during her time in power. You know, those requests have fallen on deaf ears. So that's one element of it. The other element of it is a perception. And again, I don't. There's a question mark around perception and reality, but there's certainly a perception within Indian political circles that there is, communal tension within Bangladesh, and that the Hindu minority are being targeted unfairly by government, by lack of law and order, etc. So it's a complicated situation, but you're right. I think it's not on the scale of the conflict between India and Pakistan for sure, which makes this all the more baffling, as you say.
Really is a case, just quickly, isn't it? I mean, this is 100% politics. There's history between Pakistan Cricket Board and the BCCI, and you kind of reluctantly get that cricket and politics overlap, but there's no history apart from a positive one between the two cricket boards, and this is just 100% politics.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. From start to finish, the decision to withdraw Mustafiz Rahman from the IPL, that was a political decision by the BCCI, and their statement at the time around that was intentionally vague. They didn't cite security as a reason for that withdrawal. They just talked about recent developments and kind of left it at that. So as you say, Manas, that was definitely a political decision. And then the response from Bangladesh has, like I say, been political as well, i.e. the politicians being very vocal in their kind of outrage, I guess, around this. The other thing, just on the political front to bear in mind, is that there are general elections, national general elections in Bangladesh taking place in less than 2 weeks' time, which again, gives kind of extra motivation for the politicians, I suppose, to be more outspoken than perhaps they normally would be.
Yeah, well, Tawhid Qureshi, let's not forget that one of the clauses in the ICC constitution which allows full membership is that there shall be no political interference in cricket boards. What a schmozzle.